This manuscript right here is over 700 years old. It's an amazing Bible leaf with a very beautiful piece of artwork on it. Now the artwork is very unique for these types of manuscripts, so you want to watch the full video to see what exactly that particular artwork looks like, and also enjoy a dramatized story of events surrounding this very piece of history. A gray winter mist creeps over the rooftops of Paris, rolling down the stone walls of the Ile de la Cité, and pooling in the narrow streets near Rue Ehrenbourg des Bries. Dawn has not yet broken, but pale light leaks over the chimneys, glinting off the frozen puddles where apprentices have sloshed water from the night before. The young man pushes open the door at the atelier. Warmth spills out first, the heat of grinding stones, candles, and bodies. Then the smell, chalk dust, animal hide, and the sharp tang of pigment. Inside, work has already begun. A sheet of vellum hangs stretched on a wooden frame, still damp from yesterday's scraping. In the far corner, someone sharpens a quill with slow, deliberate strokes. No one speaks. They rarely do at this hour. Words feel too heavy, too disruptive for the kind of work the master demands. The young man sets down his bundle of parchment and steps toward the center table. There, under the wavering glow of a single candle, Jehan Pucelle leans over a fresh folio. His brush moves with a steadiness that seems unnatural in the cold. Thin strokes of gray turn into the beginnings of a figure, an angel, rendered in the pale monochrome that has made the workshop's reputation. Its wings appear first, crisp and translucent like frost etched on glass. A second figure takes shape beside it, the suggestion of a robe, a hand raised in blessing. Layer by layer, the ghostly forms deepen. The young man stands still, the room itself standing still. And even the candle flame seemed to hesitate, afraid to disturb the moment. In the margins, Pucelle's brush wanders. A tiny creature emerges, a monkey in a monk's cowl, half grinning as though it knows something it shouldn't. Above it, a knight on horseback lowers his lance toward a snail whose shell gleams with a dusting of gold. These playful creatures, these whispered jokes, these moments of mischief, they appear only in margins, never in the center where the eyes of patrons linger. A soft crack echoes through the workshop. One of the apprentices has dropped a quill. Pucelle looks up, not sharply, not irritated, just long enough for the young man to see his eyes. Calm, steady, and tired. And full of something else, something like defiance. He turns back to the vellum. But a new figure begins to emerge, not in the main scene, but hidden within the architectural border of the page. Just a sliver of a man, a robe, and tonsure. A hand raised not in blessing, but holding something small and oval. That small item is a mirror. A faint curve appears in the mirror's surface, the first hint of a reflection. As it darkens, the shape becomes impossible to mistake. A crown, not ornate or jeweled, just a simple band, yet unmistakably royal. Someone shifts in the corner. A breath catches. The tension in the room twists like a knot pulled tight. Pucelle lowers his brush. And yet the mirror remains unfinished. He closes the pigment pot, rises without a word, and leaves a folio on the table. His footsteps fade down the corridor. The door closes, and the workshop can finally exhale. Only then does the young man move. He approaches the folio, pulse flickering in his throat. The angel gazes serenely from the center of the page. The mischief in the margins seems frozen mid-laughter. But the figure with the mirror, he leans closer. In the right light, the crown glints, not with gold, but with meaning. Behind the young man, soft footsteps return. Pucelle stands in the doorway. The boy quickly straightens up, but the master only studies him, quiet and unreadable, before setting down a small knife on the table beside the folio. A scraping knife, clean, sharp, and ready. His hand rests on it for just a moment. Then he extinguishes the candle, and the workshop falls into darkness. And by morning, the vellum is scratched clean again. The border shows faint scratches where an image once lived. Ash settles in the hearth, fine and gray as Pucelle's beloved pigment. No one asks what the page contained. No one speaks of the crown. And no one mentions the mirror. Jehan Pucelle's hand is long gone, but the margins still whisper and live on. So as always, it's a fascinating story with a lot of really interesting historical elements to it. These figures that I talked about, at least Jehan, is a true, real person who actually lived, a very famous illuminator in Paris during the same time that the manuscript I have in my collection is from. Now I'll show you what the manuscript looks like because it's a very beautiful manuscript. Now it may actually be quite difficult to see because it's extremely small. This is what's known as a Parisian Bible, at least I believe it's from Paris because that's what the signs that I can see on it demonstrate. But it's a beautiful small leaf, one of the smaller ones in my collection, with a beautiful and ornate initial in the middle, or a miniature, or sometimes referred to as historiated initials, because it's typically telling some kind of story or information within the initial there on the parchment. A really beautiful item. The leaf is from around 1280 likely, containing the end of the book of Habakkuk and the opening to the prophet Zephaniah. And you can tell because this initial is opening up to that chapter of the book of Zephaniah, a very great and important book, and very fine and beautiful artwork. Now what's most impressive about this is the intricate detail found within the initial. This is extremely small. As you can see, it's barely the size of my hand, and it has this really detailed bird within this initial. But Paris at this time, before I get into the bird aspect more, was the central hub for Bible production. Producing these manuscripts is very common. I've talked about this in a lot of my other videos, so I would encourage you to go and check those out because I can divulge that a lot more there rather than doing it here. So today's focus is not necessarily on the leaf or the manuscript itself, more so on the artwork found within it, particularly that illuminated initial on there. It is, of course, the centerpiece of this manuscript, so it's a very beautiful piece and has a lot of great history. So let's get into it and see what exactly we can learn from this beautiful piece from a Bible. Now, as I mentioned before, medieval Bibles didn't have chapters or verses in the way that we have them today. Now, they did have chapters, as we can see here. You can see clearly chapter 3 from the book of Habakkuk. We can see 3 by the Roman numerals indicated there, but it most certainly didn't have verse divisions in the way that we have them in our modern Bibles. So instead of having like a whole title page like we typically have in our Bibles today, they would distinguish between new book transitions with a very nice illuminated initial, especially these types of Bibles. So it's a fascinating piece and very common for you'll see in almost every medieval manuscript, specifically the Bible manuscripts. That beautiful artwork on there is what would tell the reader, okay, we're transitioning from this book to this one, especially, as I mentioned, within Bibles. And of course, it would help students and clergy and priests navigate the manuscript much more simply, being able to see the different elements of the book or the different separations of the books based upon those beautiful initials. And they're oftentimes telling a story. There's a lot of really important significance behind these initials. Sometimes it's just playful or humor added into it. Other times it ties into the contents within the particular manuscript, although that's a little bit more rare, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But I want to take a second to talk about the artistic process, how a scribe or an artist would go through illuminating a manuscript like the one I have here. Now, I have had many Bibles from Paris or Italy that have beautiful artwork on them. This is just one example, but I sold this one, so I'll be shipping it out here tomorrow as of the recording of this video to give to the new buyer of this. So first, a scribe would write out the entire page. So you have the backside of this manuscript here. You can see it's just text on there. The scribe would write out every single line of text within it, and then they would leave certain portions blank for the illuminator to then go in and put their artwork in. So they would have written this particular portion of text here and left this little space blank for an illuminator to go in and paint the initial. They would usually leave a faint gilt letter in the margin which told the artist what to paint. So this letter within the little blank space would tell the illuminator this is the letter that should be there. If it was a Q or an A or whatever the letter was, it would tell the illuminator, okay, when you make your initial, make sure it represents or signifies this particular manuscript. And then they would go ahead and do their process within the illumination. There's a lot more technical steps that we can get into, but for sake of time and brevity, I'm not going to get into that today. Now, as I mentioned, within this particular manuscript is this bird on the top. Now, the main initial does have small dragons within it, but I want to focus more on the bird because the dragons are pretty common. I've had a lot of manuscripts with those little dragons within the initials, but the bird is the unique aspect, at least from my portion of being a collector. Birds are by no means rare within medieval manuscripts, but for my purposes as a collector, I've only had this one that has a very clear bird within it. But birds often symbolized watchfulness, spiritual vision, and the soul ascending. But they also show the personality of the artist himself. The person who actually drew or painted this initial oftentimes is reflected within this particular manuscript. Similar to the story I told in the beginning, with the mirror having a reflection there, the artist put his own thoughts and emotions into the illumination. Oftentimes we'll see that with other manuscripts. But these creatures weren't accidents. They were intentional touches meant to delight the reader. So they're meant to be nice looking. They're meant to be appealing to the eye because that was their goal. They wanted these very expensive and valuable books or Bibles to be appealing to someone who waited many years and spent lots and lots of money for it to enjoy. So there's a lot more that could be said about this illuminated manuscript, but I have a lot of other ones that are similar to it, so I'll go into more detail about those manuscripts and the background and the details about maybe how they were illuminated. But if you actually have interesting questions or things that you would like to hear about, be sure to leave comments below because I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you might be interested in, maybe different elements or aspects of these items. I'd love to get your insights, so be sure to leave the comment below. And also, check out my other long-form videos. I have a wide range of topics that I cover, ranging hundreds and even thousands of years. I've got very old manuscripts. You can see a lot of my collection behind me. I've acquired it over the years. It's very valuable, and I want to share it with you guys. I want to show the world these amazing pieces of history, how God's Word has been preserved through the centuries and millennia. It's really an amazing and beautiful thing. So be sure to check those videos out, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Please help support the channel and help it grow. I'd love to be able to do more videos like this in the future, so I'd really appreciate that. And of course, stick around for the close-up shots. You'll be able to see this magnificent and beautiful leaf in a lot more detail, much closer up, and enjoy the beauty that it contains.